Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/ProRevenge. In today's episode, violate written safety procedures so we don't lose $24 million. Nope. Do the work exactly how you want it done, even though it's ridiculously wrong? Fine by me. New company commander requires soldiers to wear ties with civilian clothing while on tour. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. Violate written safety procedures so we don't lose $24 million. Nope. This happened about 15 years ago at a large manufacturing plant, at which I was one of 120 industrial electricians, and this happened in the department in which I was primarily responsible. These jobs pay upwards of $30 per hour, and I was making $34 per hour at the time. This was my career for decades before I retired last year. I now get a pension from them and fully paid health care. This wasn't just a run-of-the-mill job. This was something to take very, very seriously. Our safety administrator retired, so a new guy started and decided to audit all of the lockout-tagout procedures, LOTO, everywhere in the facility. This place employed 4,000 people and was over 1.5 million square feet, so it was a massive undertaking. Many of the machines in my department were large, multi-station transfer machines, where the part goes into several drilling/milling/tapping/boring operations, and are transferred to the next station in turn between operations. Basically, the operator loads a raw part into it, and once it comes back around to him/her, it's finished. The cycle time for this machine was about 1 minute and was a key part in expensive final products, costing upwards of $50,000 each. It was made clear to me that the company lost $50,000 for every minute the machine was idle, as a way of instilling urgency, as if I needed it. As I said, these machines had multiple stations that each had its own specialized operation to accomplish, all automatically. This, of course, involved many switches, buttons, computers, motors, encoders, drives, all of which are used in industrial automation and sequencing. Usually, when an electrical part broke on a particular station, I would shut down the electrical power for that one station to perform my repairs and replacements. All was good, and I could usually perform just about any repair within 15 minutes or less. The management people usually didn't even know anything unusual happened, as the operators were on piecework and would often skip a break to make up the shortfall. Until the new LOTO procedures were released for those machines. The new procedure required anyone performing repairs to LOTO every station, for every kind of energy potential. This includes electrical, pneumatic, hydraulic, and gravity. Since this was a union facility, this required the services of an electrician, a plumber, a mechanic, and a millwright. It also required something like 38 individual locks to be applied by the aforementioned skilled tradespersons. It also required about 4 to 8 hours of work to complete this task. Keep in mind these were huge machines that would take up an area the size of a gymnasium, and cost tens of millions of dollars to buy. When I saw the new LOTO procedure, I grabbed my boss and the production supervisor and showed it to them and explained in detail why this was ridiculous, unnecessary, and unworkable. My boss got the safety administrator, and we all had a conference, and I was told, basically, that's the way it is. The very next day a type of switch called a proximity switch failed on one of these machines. Normally, a 5 to 10 minute repair. Cue malicious compliance. I dutifully informed the production supervisor that he lost his machine for the rest of the shift and half the following shift. He chuckled and said, "Yeah, sure." I said, "Dude, I'm dead serious." I got my boss, told him I needed 38 LOTO locks, a plumber, a mechanic, and a millwright. He looked at me like I had 3 heads. "Remember the conversation we had yesterday? It just got real. Show me why you need 38 locks." Okay, and I brought him to the machine, pulled the 10-page illustrated, notated, laminated, LOTO procedure off the machine, and counted where each and every lock needs to go. And I need the other tradesmen here as well. I figure the machine will be rendered safe by the end of the shift. Matt can do the repair, and another 4 hours to remove the locks and set the machine up to be ready to run by their lunchtime. Also, keep in mind that there will be cribbing to make the gravity potential safe, and most locks need a special kind of hardware to apply to valves and other devices to be able to function correctly. Just fix it the way you usually fix it, my boss told me. Put it in writing, I said. "Just fix the damn thing," was his unhelpful reply. "I think you need to give it to me in writing, or you need to get my union rep here. Those are your two choices. I'm not gonna get fired over this." About this time, several men in suits and ties showed up to find out what the problem is, called into action by the production supervisor I previously mentioned. He and I had a great working relationship, and he knew what was going down, so he started making phone calls when I let him know his machine was broke. To make a long story short, an hour-long meeting was held which included my union rep, after which I was provided written permission to make the repairs as I always had. The new safety administrator had been properly scolded and learned a lesson. Management learned to just let Wirenut do his job, and the machine was running 10 minutes after I received the paper. That was a loss of $3.5 million according to their math. It would have been $24 million lost if I had to follow their procedures to the letter. All new procedures were put in place with much input from my colleagues and me. This was a test case for how the other 500 skilled tradespeople were going to be proceeding with the new safety guy, as they had also been provided with new, ridiculous Lotto procedures. It just turned out that I was the first to have to implement them. Do the work exactly how you want it done, even though it's ridiculously wrong? Fine by me. I've been a long-time lurker on this sub, but for once I actually have something worthy enough to post about. Some background before we start. I worked as a drone pilot/mine surveyor for a man-child, using drones to take pictures of the mines, creating a 3D model out of those pictures, and then calculating all sorts of goodies for the clients like their gold yield, and the amount of shit they have to move, etc. It's really technical and can easily go completely to shit if you don't know what you're doing, and even if you know what you're doing, it can still very easily go to complete shit. I'm licensed and certified. I've been playing the game for a longest time now, and I know how it works most of the time. My ex-boss, on the other hand, didn't. See, he got his surveyor's license during the 80s by complete chance. He was a simple miner who just happened to be in the right place at the right time, getting a free university scholarship to become a surveyor because they had a few grants left over and called out who wanted it. His hand was one of the ones they picked. The second he got his license, he quit his job and convinced an old retiree surveyor to throw in his retirement, all cards on the table, to start up their own surveying business. He spent the entire time at the golf course and the bar, making a fat amount of cash out of his newly founded, self-milking cash cow. Not once did he carry out an actual survey. Hell, I doubt he's even stepped foot on a mine since then. He just invoiced the clients, told the retiree where to go and collected a paycheck. So, time moves on, work slowly filters in and, as one does when they reach the ripe old age of 80-something, the retiree decides fuck this and kicks the bucket. My boss's cash cow just died on him, and no matter how hard he squeezed the teats, the only thing coming out of it now was dust. The only other employee was this other guy who acted as his assistant and basically just carried heavy shit for him. He didn't have a backup. So of course, he hired me. I was pretty fresh into the game at the time, starving and basically homeless, and in my eyes this guardian angel just descended from the heavens and offered me a way out that doesn't involve an ungodly amount of Xanax and a short rope. He basically told me that we have to survey X site and get the data to X client. Didn't tell me how, didn't tell me what data exactly they want, hell, he didn't even tell me when they needed it by. He just pointed to the place on Google, told me to go there, and get it done. Somehow I fucking did it. By the skin of my left test, I scraped by and eventually figured out just what the fuck to do. At some point we were kicked off of the mine for reasons that my boss didn't disclose to me, and had to open up our own offices. My boss graciously dug deep into his pockets, kicked out his eldest son, and dedicated that room in his house to our use. Now I was spending every day with the man, since if he wasn't at the golf course, he was at home. We started butting heads. He had this illusion in his head of how things work, and how you're supposed to do things, and I had practical experience and qualifications to tell me otherwise. Every single day was a fight, and every single day he'd tell me how he wanted it to be done, and I'd just turn around and do it the way it's meant to be done. I started passing out my CV like herpes at a frat party. My timing was perfect though, cause a little blip and crash of the 2020 job economy happened right as I started searching. The interviews I had lined up all got cancelled. The people who I already interviewed with, and who seemed ecstatic to have me, suddenly didn't answer my calls. I felt like a scorned lover, waiting on the curb in the rain, underwear clinging to my butt cheeks and my socks soaking wet. I was considering maybe going back to IT, or even better, prostitution. I could maybe make $1 each, and thanks to a well-used childhood spent chewing gum, I knew I had the jaw muscles for it. I felt fucking hopeless and dejected, doomed to a life of taking care of a disgusting man-child and his fat wallet. Eventually though, a second angel descended from the heavens, once again saving me from that seductive little noose. I checked her wings for wires and asked her to do a STD check before we carried on, and she checked out. Finally, I could fucking leave this place. I was waiting on the contract, not really willing to commit to anything without it being in writing, when my boss and I got into another massive screaming fight. After hour 3, something inside me snapped. You want it done your way? Fucking fine, I'll do it your way. I committed fucking hard to following his procedure every step of the way. Surveys were taking 3 times longer to do. The drone crashed 4 times, my first ever crash, and all of them were near write-offs. The 3D models stopped looking like mines and started resembling potato chips and Twizzlers. He had clients calling him day and night, non-stop, asking him just what the fuck is he doing. Eventually he gave my number to them so they can call me directly, and I started getting calls day and night, non-stop, until I just turned off my phone outside of office hours. Clients were threatening to drop the contracts. Clients were threatening to sue. My contract came in from my new company, and I signed the dotted line with a smile on my face. One client stopped calling and stopped paying. Word got out, as it always does, that his company is just some redneck hoo-ha being run out of someone's home. Another client canceled the contract completely and threatened legal action. I handed in my resignation. My boss looked at me pleadingly, offering me a fuck ton of cash to stay. If cocaine could make you feel even half as good as I felt then, sign me up. I told him to get fucked. He begged me to write him a manual on how to do the work. To show him how to process the data, to fly the pits, to set up the instruments. I spent the last 2 weeks there writing out every procedure he ever told me I needed to follow, sent it through to him, and walked away. A few weeks later, when he was scheduled to do a survey, I was suddenly spammed with calls and emails and messages from him, asking me how to do this or how to fly that or where to find this data. His manual wasn't working, surprise surprise. I dunno, just read the manual. My new company is currently picking up all the contracts he's dropped. If we manage to get the last one, I'm gonna ask them for a bonus. New company commander requires soldiers to wear ties with civilian clothing while on tour. This post reminded me of a similar event. I was in a US Army band stationed in Germany in the early 90s. We performed a lot of concerts and events for the public all over the region, usually traveling by bus. Normally we would wear civilian clothing while traveling, then change into a formal military uniform after we arrived, unpacked, and set up for the event. Our normal requirement for civilian clothing was pretty informal, similar to what you might wear in an office in the US. Men had to wear a shirt with a collar, so lots of us wore polo shirts. Jeans were acceptable as long as they were clean and no holes, no hats, etc. I had been there about 6 months when we got a new company commander. In a band, the commander is a warrant officer, and also conducts the band, runs rehearsals, picks music, all that fun stuff. He had been with the unit about 2 weeks, and went along with us on a short 2 to 3 day tour to play some concerts for German civilians. When we returned, he started making changes. Most were pretty minor and expected, like what music would be performed. But the biggest change was to our travel dress code. All male soldiers would be required to wear a tie when on tour. Never mind that many of these kids were rather young and didn't even own one, other than the flat black tie issued with our Class A uniforms. The next trip was only a few days away, and we had better show up ready to go with ties on. And that's when me and my roommate decided to have a little fun. We went to the local thrift shop and bought up all the ugly ties we could find. Paisley ties, Christmas ties, ties with Hawaiian hula girls on them. Thin neon-colored 80s ties, super wide 70s ties, even a few plaid bow ties. Over the next few days, we handed them out to nearly every person in the unit, including a few women who wanted to get in on the fun. Tour departure day arrives, and we have our morning formation in the band hall, all standing in rows, dressed and ready to depart, new ties worn. The first sergeant is wearing a lovely hula girl tie, and grins a bit as he goes over all the usual formalities, everyone present, all equipment ready to go, last-minute instructions, blah blah blah, then calls the company commander in. The new commander steps inside the band hall and freezes. He looks slowly down the lines of soldiers, biting his lip, like he's trying very hard not to say something. He backs out of the room, still not saying a word. About a minute later, he returns, looks right at the first sergeant, and says, "Everything ready to go?" "Yes, sir." "Right. Let's hit it." The tour went off without any problems, but the requirement to wear ties was dropped as soon as we got back. Some of us still wore them occasionally for fun. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.